Hi, good morning, Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce. This is Matthew Jaramillo coming to you with about 4 days left in this legislative session. It has been a whirlwind of a week with some good business related news. Uh, House Bill 11, the paid family medical leave piece of legislation, did not get out of Senate Finance. So I know Bridget and the team have worked really hard on really trying to curtail that piece of policy, just because it wasn't necessarily business friendly from a myriad of standpoints. So I think we need to give Bridget and the coalition, the Grants Chamber, the Greater Albuquerque Chamber, the Hispano Chamber, the Alamogordo, Las Cruces Chambers, all a round of applause. The Restaurant Association, Hospitality Association, all of them worked really hard, really to educate our lawmakers on the good, bad, and the indifference of that legislation. And I think that message carried pretty strongly on Saturday when that bill was entertained in Senate Finance. The chairman even went as far as to say, baby steps and incremental implementation is probably the best way to go. So hopefully that rings true as we probably will see that again next year. But we really want to thank all the support from the community and really congratulating them on a really professional and hard fought campaign to defeat that piece of legislation. We also really need to thank the chairman and vice chair of Senate Finance, George Munoz, Benny Shendo, as well as Bobby Gonzalez from Taos and Pete Campos from Las Vegas, along with all the Republicans on that committee for opposing that legislation. It came over from the House in a fashion that the Senate wasn't too keen on, and I think that helped as well. So really, the coalition should take this to note, kind of figure out what worked this year, what we need to do better next year, because this is going to be another topic of conversation, and figuring out how we can work with the proponents of the bill to make sure that it's something that the business community can support. I think I'm not wrong in saying that we want the best for our employees. We want the best for our employers, and we want it in a fashion that is financially stable and viable, something that everybody can afford and everyone can take advantage of. But that was one good piece of news that we had from the business community. We do have 4 days to go. Anything can happen. We've always got our two best friends, chaos and turmoil, and that's still kind of continuing to make it through this legislative session. But to kind of give you a quick update of what's moved, what's at the governor's desk, what's been signed, and what likely has an opportunity to get through. Particularly knowing that the one initiative that has to get done every year is the budget. But if we're looking at what's already been signed by the governor, House Bill 1, which is always known as the feed bill, which is the legislation that pays for the entire legislative session. Of course, that's done within the first day, and that's already been signed by the governor. Ringing true with what Leader Worth said during our legislative update, they really wanted to get two key initiatives through, one related to behavioral health and the other one related to, really helping to coordinate and fighting crime. So House Bill 8, which is the omnibus public safety reform, that's already been signed by the governor. Senate Bill 1 establishes the trust fund for the behavioral health initiative. That's the one that, our Santa Fe delegation was really promoting as before the session started. And then Senate Bill 3, which sets up, a draft region-specific plan for local behavioral health needs to coordinate with the Office of the Courts. So that's already been signed, sealed, and delivered by the governor. Some legislation that's passed both the House and the Senate chamber. So we have House Bill 5, which creates the Office of Child Advocates within the New Mexico Department of Justice. This isn't as strong, or it doesn't have as much teeth as the governor would like, but it really kind of sets that forward on how can we best protect our kids in this state. House Bill 47, it raises existing veterans property tax exemption from $4,000 to $10,000. and it allows exemptions for veterans with service-related disabilities. A noble piece of policy there. House Joint Resolution 2. This is something that Member McQueen here in Santa Fe has tried for a number of years, which is a constitutional amendment to eliminate pocket vetoes. And that's particularly a transparency measure where the governor doesn't necessarily have to disclose why she is vetoing a piece of legislation just by not acting on it during that time period. Also looking at House Memorial 27, it creates a plan to study the anti-donation clause of the state constitution before the upcoming 2026 legislative session. Senate Bill 5 reforms the State Gaming Commission, which oversees hunting, fishing regulations, and the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. Senate Bill 163 allows students to wear tribal regalia at graduation ceremonies and other events. And Senate Bill 417 amends the state code to better define the parameters needed to determine parenthood of children conceived through assisted reproductive methods. So those are gone through the first chamber. It's up to the governor to see what she chooses to do with the bills. The memorials don't have to go to the governor. And as always, the joint resolutions go to the ballot initiative at the next major election. So now with 4 days left to go, there's still some main pieces of legislation that are working on. And so last night, House Bill 2, which is known as the state budget, was discussed in Senate Finance. We have about $900 million new dollars thanks to the oil and gas industry. And so this year's budget was an increase from last year to about $10.8 billion. Knowing that this is just really what the revenues and what the state has to balance, there's a number of initiatives that we use a lot of our state dollars to match from the federal side. So this is just a portion of what New Mexico sees as we move forward. It does have some bipartisan support. It does a lot of great things like increase salaries of teachers, allocates funds for high school students and others, and really looks to support a lot of safety measures, education measures, and infrastructure needs that we have across our state. So we really want to thank both House Appropriations and Senate Finance for their hard work and really crafting something that looks like it will have some support all across the different delegations of our political spectrum. House Bill 7 is the Children's Future Act, which creates a mechanism to invest in the future of New Mexico's children far down the line. This is considered a baby bonds initiative championed both by our state treasurer and others that look to instill fiscal responsibility and an opportunity as our adolescents turn into adults in later years, with the potential that they could support further education, first-time homebuying programs, investment opportunities, and that kind of thing. House Bill 9, it bans the state and local governments from contracting with the federal government to detain people for civil immigration violations. And it also requires counties that have such contracts to end them as soon as possible. And this is really in retribution of what's going on at the federal level with the Trump administration, knowing that we have such a diverse community here in the state of New Mexico, a minority majority state. We do have House and Senate leadership, as well as others, that really are taking to heart the protection of every New Mexican, regardless of where you're from. So that's a measure there that is near and dear to leadership. House Bill 10, it provides the Regulations and Licensing Department with law enforcement authority to really curb illicit cannabis and that market. And that's currently on the Senate floor. It might be entertained sometime in the next 72 hours as we move forward. House Bill 12 expands the Extreme Risk Firearm Protection Order, and this allows law enforcement to immediately seize guns in cases of imminent harm and file so-called red flag petitions themselves. The current location here is also on the Senate floor. House Bill 14 creates the Earned Income Tax Credit, and it replaces the Reagan-era Working Families Tax Credit with a higher income threshold for workers and families. And this was really a controversial piece of legislation that started in the House as an equalization tax on oil and gas, and it has morphed into a small tax package. The unfortunate theme of this is that it's only relegated to one industry as opposed to spread across the entire business sector. But the legislators have the opportunity to make these decisions. And the tax credit, in a sense, is going for a bunch of noble initiatives, especially low-income wage earners, uh, looking at how they measure a number of different things. So this has quickly moved from the House over to the Senate, passed the Senate committee yesterday, and most likely will be heard rather soon and onto the governor's desk. House Bill 63, it alters the state's per pupil education funding formula and child living in poverty and additional dollars for students learning English. That one currently sits in Senate Finance as well. House Bill 37, which is another piece of legislation that the governor has championed related to our strategic water supply, which allows for the treatment and reuse of brackish water. That one also sits in Senate Finance. House Bill 143. This is more of a transparency and disclosure bill that has also caused a little bit of transparency related to lobbyist disclosure, where government affairs folks that lobby on behalf of one client or multiple clients should disclose on their position on various pieces of legislation. House Bill 166, this changes the liquor license for restaurants and expanding the license options and removes some restrictions. This one is in Senate Judiciary. House Bill 197 expands the New Mexico Silver Alert System, which alerts media and the public to missing elders and include any elder believed to display any signs of cognitive decline or impairment without requiring an official diagnosis, particularly with dementia or Alzheimer's. House Bill 586 increases the oversight of acquisitions and mergers of hospitals in New Mexico by private equity companies. This has been a challenging piece of legislation for our hospitals, particularly the ones that we have here with Christus and Presbyterian. And really what it does, it moves to shift oversight from the Office of the Superintendent of Insurance to the Healthcare Authority. This one is on the House floor, and if it does decide to move, it would have to move pretty quickly through the Senate. 586 is a rather high bill. Those are known as dummy bill measures. And then this one's really being championed by Rena Skapansky, the House Majority Leader here, a delegate in Santa Fe. Then we have two House Joint Resolutions. House Joint Resolution 1, which changes the length of the legislative session from 45 to 45 days, moving the 30-day and the 60-day more to a 45-day measure. That one does sit in Senate rules, and it'll be interesting to see if that one gets out. Joint Resolution 5 is a constitutional amendment to overhaul CYFD. This one does have a long way to go too. It is a House Joint Resolution, and it is sitting on the House floor. It remains to be seen if this will quickly move through the Senate if it does have that hearing on the House. Senate Bill 13 creates a state and tribal education compact in schools, and this authorizes the state public education department to enter into compacts with Indian tribes, nations, and pueblos to create language and cultural-based initiatives and institutions. This one is now in House Education. Once it gets out of House Education, if it moves, we'll move to the House floor and then off to the governor's desk. Senate Bill 20, it increases taxes on certain tobacco projects. This one is in House Tax and Rep. Senate Bill 21, which was another initiative that was championed by Senator Worth. This is related to the Sackett case and primacy related to New Mexico controlling water over what the federal government chooses to do. And really, it allows the state to take over the administration of discharge permits to protect the surface waters from the US EPA. And that one is a Senate bill sitting on the House floor. Once it gets off the House floor, it'll go to the governor's desk to see if she will sign it. Senate Bill 23 is another piece of legislation related to oil and gas, and it's considered the royalty rate bill. This piece of legislation raises the oil and gas royalty rate to premium state tracts of land from where it currently is at 20% to 25%. And this is to keep on par with what Texas does. Granted, oil and gas is different from state to state. But this money, as you know, is administered by the state land office and then moves to pay for a number of noble beneficiaries related to higher education. Senate Bill 19 implements training requirements for the Board of Regents of public higher education institutions. This one is currently on the House floor, and this one again stems from a lot of the challenges that were brought to light with Western University, the president, and the regents there on the potential of improper spending and notification and communication through a lot of that. Senate Bill 36 prohibits the state from releasing certain information, particularly driver data, for federal immigration and enforcement. Again, keeping with the theme of protecting many of those that live in New Mexico, really from unlawful engagement in proprietary information. Senate Bill 88, another important piece of legislation, creates the state trust fund to bolster and match the federal Medicaid dollars. This one is currently in House Appropriations. Once it makes it out of House Appropriations, again, it goes to the House floor for floor debate. Senate Bill 219, it creates a program to fund magic mushrooms, which has been interesting. This one has had a lot of debates related to a lot of the systemic challenges that we do have here in New Mexico with drug use. Now, this is more of a psychological, sociological type of initiative. However, you can kind of see where both sides of the conversation and debate will be. And then kind of looking at what is most likely dead and not going to make it through this year. Of course, House Bill 11, which was the paid family medical leave, that was tabled 8-3 on Saturday. House Bill 134, this one would have implemented harsher penalties for juvenile offenders. This one was tabled earlier on in the session. House Bill 426, this calls for the minimum wage bill. Again, Bridget was very successful in working with the coalition to really talk about this one, but this one called for a $5 bump to the state's 12-hour minimum wage starting in 26. And it also would require employers to pay tipped workers $17 an hour, up from $3 an hour. This one had, of course, both sides of the conversation, to where many felt that if they were paid an hourly wage, they would miss out on the advantageous of tipped wages, and others that may work in a lower tip environment, the increase from $3 to $17. So you can kind of see the two perspectives there. House Bill 274 would have imposed life sentence on fentanyl traffickers. That one was tabled in House Public Affairs. House Bill 275 would have eliminated the personal income tax in New Mexico. However, a similar bill like this was rolled into House Bill 14 related to the earned income tax credit. Senate Bill 4, this would have set targets on New Mexico to a zero emission state. This was tabled in Senate Finance. This bill, probably one of the more dangerous business bills of the session, had far-reaching unintended consequences related to the intent, which was trying to do what we would all want is really a more carbon-free future. However, the steps that it took to get there really were just not business friendly and not workable from a number of standpoints. Senate Bill 176, this would have altered the Medical Malpractice Act, capping attorneys' fees in malpractice cases, and also siphoning off 75% of punitive damages to finance the Patent Safety Improvement Fund. This was tabled in Senate Health and Public Affairs earlier in the session. Senate Bills 360 and 499, these would have removed provisions, current law governing so-called safe haven states or baby boxes. There's an initiative through a dummy bill measure that looks like this could be revitalized. Not certain how far that would make it, but with 4 days to go, chances are slim, because that clock is continuing to tick. And then Senate Joint Resolution 1, which would have called for a constitutional amendment creating a commission to establish salaries for state lawmakers. This one is tied and deadlocked in Senate Finance on a 5-5 vote. So as you can see, there's been a lot of things that have been done this legislative session. As it's been told to me in my 23 years of doing this, every session brings new opportunities, new ideas. And like I said, chaos and turmoil are our best friends that we're always going to see join with us. The bills that are supposed to pass will pass. The bills that are not supposed to pass will not pass. Sometimes one gets through here and there, but ultimately the legislature does right by the state of New Mexico in a lot of sense. It might not always agree with what the business community sees, but again, that's why we have elections. That's why we elect those to represent us in the best way. And it's also important to support our our local trade associations, chambers, and those folks that work with them. So again, I think Bridget has done a phenomenal job this year working with the goal that we set to make the Santa Fe Chamber more visible, more viable, and really provide the voice of business in Santa Fe. And she has done that in a wonderful fashion. The team that she has there with the Santa Fe Chamber is great. They've been working hard this session to really not only do business as usual, because the world seems to stop a lot of times during legislative session, especially in a 60-day. But we really need to congratulate her and the board and everything they've done and the alliances that they've made, and really the progress they have in establishing a very high level of respectability at the Roundhouse. We have 112 elected officials that are essentially volunteers that do this because there's a passion and a reason for why they represent the communities that they do. And again, it's up to us to really give them the good piece of information on a piece of legislation, why we do not like it, we don't think it's good for the community, and also, other information that could help make them an informed decision. And that's really all we can ask at the end of the day is, do we do everything we can to inform them that this is a good piece of legislation, why it's not, and how it would affect our community moving forward. So I think this is going to be our last conversation. It has been a wonderful, wonderful time giving you a heads up on what's going on during this session time. And as always, if you need anything, we're a phone call away. Bridget and the team are there. Please give them a call if you ever need anything from us or the board or the Government Affairs Committee. We really thank you for joining us. Thank you for being supportive. And we'll see you. Have a wonderful summer. Bye.